Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast, where we serve and support leaders so you can serve and support your local church.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Olson, and I am here with another amazing interview. Guys, I'm so excited. So here's the thing. I have been able to talk to people from all over the world, and this year I have guests joining me from a city that is one of my favorite cities to visit, Chattanooga. And so I'm not going to beat around the bush and wait any longer. I'm super excited to have Dell and Haley from Natural State. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I always love meeting new people. So why don't you start us off and just tell our listeners a little bit about you guys, about your band, and just the ministry a little bit.
Yeah. So we are Natural State, and we consist of 3 to 4 players, but Dell and I own the business, and we have been doing this ministry for since 2019. Is that right, Dell? Yeah. And we are just so excited to just share our story and just create music that resonates with people. We've been in ministry a long time separately. And that's how we met, is at the church that I work at here in Chattanooga. And we've played together a long time, led worship together a long time. And now we're in Natural State.
That's amazing. I love that. So, Dell, are you still both working at the same church together?
No, I currently work in IT.
Okay.
Ironically enough,
Dell.
I work in IT for a hospital here in town.
Okay. Amazing. That's amazing. And so tell me a little bit about how you guys started Natural State. Like, what was the process of you guys wanting to begin this ministry?
Yeah. So I had pursued creating music from the time I was a teenager. And so I was kind of in the Christian music industry world at a very early age, but just didn't really know what it took to kind of foster that gift. And everyone would say it takes hard work, but I just kind of felt aimless. Like I didn't necessarily understand what work ethic was. And my mom was so awesome. She started fostering this gift in me and trying to give me direction. And I ended up I've wrestled with insecurity my whole life. And so just being in that world and kind of not really knowing who you are is just very difficult to navigate, just all the voices. And if you kind of aren't rooted and planted in, this is what God's called me to do. And even just knowing that this is a calling, like being called to either lead worship or create music, it's just very hard to waver and get distracted and kind of it warp your thinking. And so I kind of my view on just music was very kind of warped from the music industry. When I took the job at Silverdale leading worship, I was living in Nashville and just felt rejected. I wasn't necessarily, just kind of putting the pieces together. Like it wasn't that I was rejected. It just was that I was wrestling with insecurity and not knowing who I was and not really understanding hard work, essentially. Yeah. And so I started leading worship at this church, and I kind of came into it in this kind of weird place internally, but God was so good to just know, hey, I'm going to heal your heart through this. And I'm going to walk you through this other passion and gifting that you have, which was leading people into his presence. I had never led worship before. I had just kind of played shows and performed. And I remember right before I took this job, I was playing a show for a youth group, and the youth pastor rushed back there and was like, hey, after we played, hey, can you guys lead How He Loves at the end of my talk? And we're like, what's How He Loves? I had never led worship ever. And so I remember that night, like a major shift happening. And just, so we learn the song backstage and we go on to lead it. And it was just different. I mean, the presence of God was just so different than just how I had experienced it performing. And so, anyway, grew in this passion for leading worship, took this job at this church, but also was kind of like, I'm never writing songs again. I'm just like done with that whole world. I'm just going to be content where I am, which was good and bad. I also like kind of made this vow, like, I'm not going to promote myself at all. Cause that's just the world that I kind of grew up in, is just, you kind of just have to have that confidence and, be kind of self-promoting. And, I just watched God open up door after door. And this is where I met Dell. And he had been in a band with his brother and his brother's wife. And they were kind of creating music in the CCM world. And he knew that I had kind of lived in that world too. And I feel like in just where we were, there weren't many people that kind of understood that. I mean, it's like a whole different,
It
world
is.
can be. And so he was like super excited to show me this new stuff he was working on. And it just kind of brought up all of these wounds and insecurities. But it was good because God knew that, like, hey, I'm calling you to something more, and I want to heal your heart through it. And my husband and my mom, like through all of these years, had just been like, you got to keep writing. You got to keep writing. So Dell and his brother were writing a worship record for his brother's church. And Dell kind of was like, hey, let's bring this girl in. She's, has some skill in writing, has some background. And we had a day of co-writing, and we say this all the time. Co-writing can be awkward. It can be like kind of tricky to navigate. But we seriously clicked. Like the four of us, we got in a room, and I think we knocked out 3 or 4 songs that day. And so it was just very clear, like God was leading in something. And so I eventually joined the band that kind of rebranded as a collective. And so we became Landers Music Co. We joke about this all the time. No one knew what the co meant. I mean, like we would be being introduced different places, and it was company, it was coalition, it was cool kids.
Yeah.
And so we went on tour with Colton Dixon and Manic Drive and a few other artists in 2019 with Landers Music Co. And it was so cool because God was just like, hey, I kind of took you out of this world for a minute, but kind of placing you back in it. But with this new foundation of like, I had been leading worship for 10 years at this point and had just grown in so many ways. And so we get back from tour. Landon and Krista, his brother and his brother's wife, have 5 kids. They run businesses. And it just was very busy for them. And so they ended up stepping away after we got back from tour. We were supposed to go back out with Citizen Way and Manic and Colton in 2020. Obviously that didn't happen. And so when they stepped away, we kind of were like, well, what do we do? Like we want to keep going.
And Landers is the road my parents live on in Arkansas. So that was kind of my brother and I, like, kind of paying homage to where we were from. And, didn't really make a lot of sense with Haley and I.
I didn't grow up on Landers.
But we were going to play, my father's a pastor, and we were going to play the church where he pastors. And to do that, you have to leave Tennessee to go into Arkansas. You cross the Mississippi River. And there's a bridge, and you're crossing the bridge into Arkansas. It says, "Welcome to the natural state." And I said to Haley, like, hey, I always liked that as a band name. Like something about that resonates like spiritually for me. And she kind of felt the same way. And it still kind of, for me, allows me to pay homage back to where I'm from. And but it was just this concept that, Christ came and gave his life for us to be returned back to our natural state, that state of redemption, that state of like that we're sons and daughters of God, and also a natural state of worship is also another thing for us. That's like a very important part of that as well, because that is for us, that is our natural state is, and obviously we understand, and I think anyone in ministry understands that worship isn't simply 3 or 4 songs on a Sunday morning, or worship isn't only expressed or experienced in music, but that corporate worship is a very like special thing that we are very honored to get to have taken part in and allowed to use our gifts in, and so that is our natural state as well. So that's kind of where that shift happened, where we became natural state, just been working on new music and different things. And
that's amazing. And that's powerful. I always love, because I'm a songwriter, I always love to hear the stories behind songs, the stories behind things like this, behind names, behind cause there's power in it. And there's so much meaning, not only, just for other people who get to hear that, but it's so deep for you guys. And that's just really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. So now you guys have been a band for a few years, and you've done some shows. I heard you did a show in Minnesota. That's where I'm at. And so that's pretty cool. I heard it was cold though. I'm not surprised.
Yes, it was really cold.
So tell me a little bit about what it looks like for you guys right now. So you're leading worship, you're on staff in a church, but what does natural state look like? Are you guys releasing music now? Are you guys tell me a little bit about the now.
Yeah. So we started working with Christian Music Marketing, Wisdom Moon and his team, just because we love creating music and obviously love putting it out, but we really struggled with just how to do that well, how to release music well. And so they have seriously helped us so much and just guiding us and giving us direction, and also just helping with this, this is the best way to put out music. So we have been putting out a few songs. When did we start putting them out? Every 6 weeks since maybe March.
Okay. So we put out one last year. And then we started this year in March. Yeah. We started.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
New music. And then once basically every 6 weeks or so, we've been releasing single.
Wow.
Yeah. And writing with a ton of people up in Nashville. Just awesome people. It just, every time we walk away from a co-write, it seems like it's just life-giving. And it's man, we really our hearts and souls needed to write that song. So, we'll see where those go in the future. So yes, I'm barely on the tail end of still working at this church, because we are transitioning to Spring Hill and the Nashville area.
Oh yeah.
Next weekend we're moving. So it's a big transition. God just confirmed it over and over. Just every time we would go up to Nashville, we've been traveling to Nashville once a week for months now. And we'll try to do, 2 things we'll try to set up 2 things in one day, where we'll do a co-write or we'll meet with someone. But it's been a lot. But God has just confirmed in so many big and small ways that this is what we're supposed to do. I'm married and I have 2 kids. And so, it's a big, there's part of me that feels very responsible for, okay, this move is definitely to pursue my calling, but my husband is super on board, and I feel this weight of okay, Lord, you're just gonna have to take care of my kids, because it's their future too, So I'm kind of in those last stages of working at the church, which is super sad, because I have led at this specific campus for 9 or 10 years. And so telling them goodbye is just it's been hard, but it's been bittersweet. They have been so supportive. I expected people to be sad. Like the first Sunday I announced, like, hey, we're leaving. I expected people to be sad, but I did not expect the overwhelming encouragement and like love that they have shown us. So it's big, but it's exciting. And man, I've never felt more confident. So
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So transition then is your current, season.
Yeah.
And what has God been doing in your lives in this transition? Like, what are some of the things that he's been teaching you as you've been transitioning, but maybe Dell, you're transitioning too, because it affects you. And so it affects kind of everything and how you guys work together. So just talk to me a little bit about how God's been moving in each of your lives through this transition. Dell, do you want to speak into that first?
Totally. I think one of the things that I've been kind of like leaning on through the process is just trust, because whether it's in ministry on a day-to-day basis, you're doing ministry, or you just have a job you're going to, or like in our case, we're transitioning to do something that's really difficult. Learning to trust, because it would be really easy for all the pieces to always fall perfectly into place and challenges not to arise. But that's not real life. And unfortunately, we all know that that's not real life. And as you kind of navigate the challenges that come with transitioning from, Haley and Will had their house on the market and it sold in 2 or 3 days. And that was exciting. And then it fell through, not because of something on the buyer's end. And, so that falls through. And so there's like, that's hard because, in their case, they're transitioning their family and kids for school and things of that nature. And, I have to work. They have to work, just working out the details of life and living and like what it looks like to continue, one, to just survive, just very basic, just to survive. And even beyond just surviving, continuing to nurture and navigate building relationships for ministry opportunities moving forward. Because even as we transition, and we are creating music that's not necessarily worship based. It is still music that connects to people, whether they're in the local church or not. And that's something that's also very important to us, is the local church. So it's important to us that we, as we transition, we're looking for opportunities to continue to serve in a local church wherever we are. And we do that. And I know for me, even whether I'm in Chattanooga or in Nashville, there's still places in Chattanooga where I will still serve and be connected as well. And just trusting that if this is God's purpose, not that everything's going to go perfectly, but it's going to go how he planned. And that's a whole lot easier said than done. Because it's very simple to like make a statement about, we're going to trust God. Okay. That's easy to do when things are going well. But what about when they're not? What about when you've applied for 150 jobs and you still don't have one? Are you still going to trust that you're taking the steps he wants you to take? So I think for me, the thing that I'm kind of like learning through the process is just continued trust that, okay, God, if this is your purpose, I'm going to trust that you're going to open the proper doors at the proper time. But also, and it does, sorry, I don't want to rabbit trail too much here, but like that also, that doesn't remove responsibility from us to continue to work hard on the things put in our hands. So it's, we're not just going to sit and wait. We still have to continue to work and try to nurture relationships and try to foster new relationships and continue to do what we can do to grow. Because there's obviously a big ministry side to what we do, but there's also a business side to what we do. And that's also true in ministry in the local church as well. And I know no one, it's not like a part of ministry like people like to talk about a lot, but unfortunately it exists and you have to, you deal with it. And So just understanding and trusting that God's going to provide what you need, and you're not just left in the dark, and that He sees you.
Yeah.
And you can trust that He's going before you and ordering your steps, because that Scripture tells us, we make our plans, but it's God that orders our steps. So, and I would say that that's been true, like from a life perspective, particularly in music for both Haley and I. Like, this would have, if I had my way, this would have worked a long time ago. Like, 20 years ago, that would have been a more sufficient timeline for me, But just trust. That, I think, from a big picture perspective, just
that's
trust.
powerful. That's powerful, and I think I hear you saying in there, it's like stewarding what God has put in front of us now, and trusting that He's going to walk with us through the future and through every door, even when there's obstacles. Because sometimes I think we have this misconception that, well, if things are hard, then that means I did something wrong, or God isn't in this. And it's like, well, it's not necessarily the case. Your house falls through. It's like, oh no, should we not move? Well, no, I mean, it's life. And, we're just going to be faithful and continue to work hard and pursue what God's put in our hearts. And that's just, it's powerful. So how about you, Haley? What has this been like for you in this transition?
Similar. And when you said that about, our house fell through, does that mean we don't move? I definitely had that thought and, wavered in this confidence for sure. And I remember this specific time. I don't remember exactly what triggered it, but I remember driving home from the church and being like, no, I was in my car alone, and I was speaking out loud. I was like, no, I am done doubting. Enemy, you are not going to have reign over my thoughts or my joy or my confidence moving forward. Like, you're not going to shake me, because I know that God has called me to do this. He has confirmed it time after time. And just because something like this happens, like I just felt so empowered and strong in that moment of like, I'm done doubting. Whatever happens, God, you're in control, and I'm relying on you. That's one of the huge things that I am personally learning, is that in times of transition, or even times where things just do not go your way and you have no control, is like, you have to rely on God. I mean, you can choose not to, but I mean, and try to do things in your own strength, or try to, make sense of it or whatever. But it's just, I mean, for me, it never works out, and there's never peace normally in that. And so we were talking with another artist friend, another creative, and she was saying, I think she has moved a lot. And we were talking through this transition, and she said, I think God reveals Himself even more like personally in these times of transition. And it could be very small to someone else, but to you, it's huge. Like these huge confirmations that you're just like, only God knew to speak to me that way. She says, because when obstacles do arise, you can be able to go back. Because if God hadn't confirmed to me in these small ways and some big ways that we were supposed to move to Nashville, when our house fell through, I don't think that I would have been able to get to that point where I'm just in my car, like declaring, no more doubt. I'm done with doubt. Like, I know you've called me to this, and this is what we're doing. We're moving forward. If He hadn't shown me so personally and intimately that this is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. So. That's so good. I love that. And I think it's a powerful word for all of us, for all of our listeners, for me, for you guys, just because whether we're in transition now or not, it's going to come at some point, because there's always transitions in our lives. And so I just love this encouraging word that you guys have given to our listeners today to, remember the call, be confident in the call that, God has put on your heart. And then through it, even in transition, to rely on God completely and to trust him, because he knows. He went before you. He has a perfect track record. So he's not going to lead us to a place that isn't good. It doesn't mean that it will always be easy, but he's with us in it. And so I just thank you guys so much for sharing your hearts. I know we had other plans for other topics, but this was so relevant to where you guys are at, and also where I think a lot of people are at. There's a lot of transition happening for people in ministry and just life in general. So I thank you guys for sharing your heart. I so appreciate that.
Thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. So I would love it if you would close us off by just telling everybody how they can get in touch with you, where they can find your music, because I know that they're going to want to go check it out. And I did, and I love it. I love the sound. I love the songs. It was just so good. And tell them first what the style is, because I don't think we didn't kick it off at the beginning talking about like the specific style of music that you guys do, and then tell them where they can get in touch with you.
Cool. So,
our style is kind of a pop punk, like Christian vibe. It's we're kind of rockers at heart, and so it's we're not going like real hard in the paint or anything, but it's kind of, some of it's driving. Obviously, if you hear Haley, you hear she's got a very powerful vocal, and she sets in that female register. It's a little lower, a lot of power, and so kind of that vibe. And of course, you can find our stuff as far as the music goes. It's any streaming outlet you go to. It's on Spotify and Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube, all the streaming places you can find it. And as far as socials, I'm going to butcher these because let's see. Instagram is Natural State Music Official. YouTube is Natural State Music Official. TikTok is Natural State Music Official, or
Natural State Official.
Natural State Official. Yeah.
Got it. Well, we can put all those in the show notes. We'll just make sure we get them from you guys via email afterwards, and then people can just click.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But that's amazing. Well,
I don't want to take a ton more of your time, but there is one more word that's come up a lot for me lately, and I won't take a ton of time, but it's perseverance. And it's I think particularly for your audience, it's an important one. Because whether you're at a time of transition or you've been where you are for a long time, to don't despise the day of small things. Just to continue to persevere in whatever God's called you to and made you for. Like it's really important. So I could talk a lot more about it, but
yes, keep going.
Amen. That's so good. Thank you guys so much. And to all of our listeners, thanks for joining today. So glad that you joined us for another episode of the Overflow Worship Podcast. And until next time.
You've been listening to the Overflow Worship Podcast. If you enjoy our podcast, please take a moment and leave us a 5-star rating and a written review, which helps us reach more people. New episodes are released every other Monday. So until next time, thank you for listening.